like my Pokemon, but not that much. I'll sell them in a heartbeat if I have to.
Oh. I'm sorry, you guys. Continue on. I didn't want to interrupt the battle that was happening right there. So have we settled it? Your team yellow, your team blue. Can you guys get along?
Like we said, we can't go back on that.
You're not wearing your yellow colors, though.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
What's up with that?
Okay.
Speaking of lack of loyalty,
camouflaged.
This guy right here, he's
incognito.
This could not be a better way to start a computer podcast.
That's yellow. Is that
backstab his Pokemon?
That I'm dressed in blue. So you
all right,
think I'm team blue.
all right. We'll settle this here in a second. Just for everybody tuning in right now, you're witnessing the Pokemon battle right now between Matt and Brad. This is Close to the Metal, our computing podcast that we do once a week, where we focus more heavily on like a specific computer issue, or maybe it's a GPU or something more technically oriented, and we want to know your feedback. We want to hear from you guys. And if you're watching live on YouTube right now, youtube.com/digital trends, of course, go ahead and pop your comments in there. Let us know what you want to talk about. Before we get into today's subject, which is the Falcon Northwest Mach V computer, which is a ton of money, but it's pretty awesome. I think we should settle this right now, or just get a little more detail here about the two of you in here, which was a Pokemon battle. To my right here is Brad. Brad, can you explain why you're Team Yellow in Pokemon?
Well, Team Yellow is like the underdog. There's less people, so you have more gyms to take over and more slots, as opposed to the blue, which is like, there's so many blue players that how are you ever going to get a spot in a gym? You're fighting with all these people.
Oh, that's a very tough thing to come back from. Now, Matt,
I don't know what the actual statistics are on who is the most popular team, but blue is definitely a superior color to yellow, which is the color of yellow lights and mustard.
There's nothing wrong with yellow lights, just for the record. I don't have anything against
yellow lights. There's just a flicker that no one really cares about.
Yeah.
So.
That stung. That one hurt. That one hurt.
Look at the blue light.
Okay.
Well, there's no blue light, so it's not really relevant to this comparison.
All right. Well, we'll have to jump back into that here in a bit. Let's get to the topic at hand.
See? I'm confused.
So far, round one to Matt for that one, for that battle. We'll come back. Brad, prepare your response to that, and we'll get back to it here in a bit. All right, let's get to the subject of today. We've got some pictures here to show you of this, and it is about this computer. It is the Falcon Northwest Mach V, which has been sold, Matt was telling me, since 1993, the longest continuously sold computer.
As far as I know, it's sort of like...
Is that one of those things where it's like, they say it, who's going to prove
it's sort
wrong?
Of one of those things where it's like, probably someone's out there is going to be like, no, it's this thing that you haven't heard of. But, I mean, I looked into it some, like, all the bigger brands that I know of, at least.
Yeah.
And I can't find or think of anyone that's had this same name going for longer.
Okay.
So.
Well, and this computer, I mean, it's massive. It's huge. We were going to bring it in here into the studio, but we really couldn't figure out how to fit it in on camera. We've got some pictures of it that you can take a look at.
About 50 pounds.
Yeah. It is a big unit. And the thing is, it's also, this is the retail price for this demo that we've got here is around $8,000. Is that right? About $8,000?
It rang up to $8,700.
$8,700. It's almost $9,000.
The bells and whistles that were on it. So.
And that's the thing. It's got a lot of bells and whistles. Yes. And it does look pretty awesome. And this came with the custom paint job, right? With the Digital Trends paint on it. Yeah.
They gave us a custom Digital Trends paint job, which was very nice of them. That's one of Falcon's, like, selling points, I would say, is like they have always been... big into the custom paint jobs, and they did that early, and they did that continually. So you can pretty much, like, they have some options on their website to be like, oh, you want this color and whatnot. But if you want something, you can pretty much just give them a call, and they'll probably be able to figure it out for you.
Okay, which is a cool aesthetic feature, right? Yeah, that's a cool aesthetic feature. But let's get to the inside of this thing. So there's a huge review that you wrote up on digitaltrends.com, so people can go there and take a look right now, or after the show. Look after the show. But let's get into this. Like, let's talk about this computer. What kind of a rating did you give this?
We give it a 9 out of 10.
That's pretty damn good.
Editor's Choice.
Editor's Choice Award. All right, so let's talk about it. What is it that makes this thing so amazing? Because especially, I'm looking at it at the price tag. Like, why would I spend $8,700? Yeah,
it's pretty much the quickest computer that you can purchase is one of the big points. Now, that sort of has a caveat to it in that you can pretty much go to a variety of high-end manufacturers and select the same components. And because of the same components, you're going to get pretty much the same performance. So it's not like this is the only one that can possibly be this quick. But, it's definitely one of the ones that can be just the quickest computer money can buy. The other really nice thing about it is that big enclosure it's just a really nice case. There's
the case is really cool.
There's it's been around for a while. It's not a new design really, but in this case I think it's aged quite well. What's nice about it is you don't have any plastic components on it. It's
actually metal.
It's all metal. It's all very sturdy and solid. It's big. So it's about 50 pounds, I think, in the configuration we got. But on the other hand, it's not. We have seen some systems. We had one from Digital Storm that was 80 pounds, and it was just
80 pounds.
It was impractically huge.
Yeah.
You probably could not easily by yourself put it on a workbench. Have to
hire movers to bring this computer in.
It was so big. And the Falcon, it's big, but it's not that big.
Is it necessary to be that big to have this kind of performance?
No, it's not.
Okay, that's what I'm because why does it need to be in this day and age? Why do you have to have a 60-pound computer?
The Falcon is probably about the sweet spot for that kind of performance.
Okay.
You could probably go a little bit smaller.
Okay.
Without any real
is it just because of the metal frame and all of that?
Well, the big thing I think is the dual GPUs. When you have two GPUs, you really need to allow a lot of extra space for cooling, for airflow, and especially trying to fit two of them into a smaller one of those computers you're used to seeing on your desk would not.
You're gonna fry it
well. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, that makes a little more sense then.
Yeah.
As far as why it's that big. Okay, so what else internally? What is it that you looked at when you review a computer? What are you looking for?
Well, the big feature. There's really two big features on this. One is it's CPU and GPU. CPU is Core i7 6950X, 10-core processor, and that's Intel's new ultimate processor.
That's the high end.
Yeah. So it's the fastest consumer processor they can buy. And I say consumer. When I say that, I mean that you also have Intel Xeon processors, but they're not really targeted at consumers. They require different sockets.
Would you even be able to utilize one of those processors?
Not for the things most people do.
Yeah,
I've seen people kind of wedge older Xeon chips into gaming situations, but I saw one where a guy had to use a dual CPU slot motherboard in order to do so, and he put a dummy processor in the other one. And,
that just seems impractical.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's definitely part of the story. And with that many cores, you're going to have, because it's got hyperthreading, which turns one core into two cores in Windows. You're going to open up your task manager and see 20 cores, 20 graphs going across your CPU thing, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's definitely gives you some bragging rights, I think. And the other thing is the GTX 1080, which it has two of. And that's the new fastest video card. I'm not sure if it's... I think it is the fastest video card.
It does beat a Titan, I believe.
Well, I was actually... it would be Titan. And I was thinking of that old Radeon 295 X2. I don't remember how fast that thing was.
So ostensibly, though, you've got the fastest processing and the fastest...
And two of the
GPU.
Fastest
and two
GPUs.
Of the fastest GPUs.
It'll do some things.
Yeah. Well, now, that being said, you've got all this power. What is it traditionally that people are using this computer for? When you buy this computer, what are you buying it for? What are you going to use it for?
Well, one thing would be 4K gaming.
Yeah.
Right? 4K gaming is something that has started to become possible over the last few years. And when it first came around, it was really, really hard to get systems to run games at 4K.
How many games are out there right now that are 4K?
Oh, pretty much.
I mean,
all of them. I mean, I don't think I've come across a game made in the last 5-10 years that isn't.
I guess I mean top end games that would really you would want to use this kind of system for.
But with the PC games, one of the nice things is that it's really easy for them to add new resolutions.
Uh-huh.
So like
So they can
4K,
update that at any time.
Yeah, the only thing that you'll run into sometimes is especially with older games, sometimes you'll have like the user interface won't scale. So like you'll play at 4K and then you'll have like this little tiny like map that you can't really use. So that can be a problem. But as far as actually displaying the game at 4K, usually not an issue.
I know I'm going to get slammed by commenters for that question too that I just put out there. See, the thing is though, I get addicted to video games really easily, so that's why I have to be careful about playing them and knowing too much. Like the more I know, the more I want them. Like
this
downloading
could be a dangerous podcast. For
yeah, I know exactly. This is going to be trouble for me. Just even downloading the damn Pokemon Go game because Brad mentioned it last week, and then I downloaded it, and then I spent all weekend trying to figure it out. I'm terrible at it, but I haven't picked a team yet. But anyway, okay, so the 4K gaming, that's one of the really good reasons for it. What else can you use this computer for though? Like besides gaming, because for me, like investing $8,700, I mean that's great. That's going to be an awesome machine. But what else can you do with it besides that? Like, is that pretty much it? Is that what people would be going for?
The other thing you might be going for is sort of workstation applications. So one of the tests we run is Handbrake, which is video encoding, and what we do is we encode a trailer over to H.265. It's 4K trailer. It's like a 420 megabyte file, and that encoding, if you're doing that on like a laptop, it's transcoding. Doing that on a laptop can take up to like half an hour on a typical laptop.
Okay.
And then like this desktop does it in. It was a little less than 3 minutes.
Okay, yeah, that's a big advantage.
So you can imagine if you like are a person who does like video editing or anything with video, if you're encoding or transcoding or whatever,
just straight up
anything
editing,
like that, every little bit that you can get off those files, like the amount of time you're like loading files, transferring files, whatever, like saves you a lot of time. So if you were trying to do it on a laptop, you go to doing it on this desktop, like that's going to save you like hours and hours of time out of your day. Like it's going to make entirely new things possible for you that weren't possible before. So,
like not sitting there and getting angry at your computer all day.
Yeah, I mean, you would just be sitting there looking at your computer.
So it'll save me.
Like, come on, go quicker.
It will help me control my anger at computers. Okay, that's an advantage. That's going in the positive slot. All right, so what else do we have? As you went through this and you were reviewing it, now I know. Let's see, we've talked about the processor, we've talked about the GPUs. What are some other highlights of this computer, of this Falcon? And just for those of you tuning in, if you don't know, we're reviewing the Falcon Northwest Mach V computer, which Matt did a review of, and Brad and Matt are kind of talking about it and going through the parts of it. And let us know if you have any questions, too, if you're tuning in right now. If you have questions about the computer, just about computing in general, or these high-end computers, let us know what those are, and we'll make sure we get to those. So going on there, what else in there stood out?
Well, one thing was 128 gigabytes of RAM, which I think
Brad,
you would agree is a little bit overkill.
Yeah, we can just call it overkill, I think. Yeah, I mean, even most people are using 8, and I think if you really want to like go for it, you could like 16. That'd be like a good day. And as soon as you hit 32, I think I'm sort of like, why are you doing that? Like, you got to have a really good reason, I think.
Yeah, there might be reasons why you would do that related to what I was talking about with like video editing, stuff like that. And considering the processors that is in it, I can definitely see like 32 gigs.
Yeah.
And RAM's cheap these days, so whatever. But yeah, 128 gigabytes of RAM.
That's a ridiculous amount of RAM.
Is an incredible amount. I mean, I can't think of anything offhand you would use that for. Now, I'm sure there's something you would use it for.
Right.
Like, and
just the idea that you have that much RAM, though, that you can try to like test it just to see what you can possibly do with it. That's awesome.
Yeah, we were talking the other day about maybe you could like store your operating system on it. And
yeah,
then,
you could definitely do
just
offload it to the hard drive.
Definitely
before
try
you shut down
doing
the
a RAM
computer.
disk.
Yeah,
which would be pretty funny. But you wouldn't really need to do that because the solid state drive in it is also fantastically quick.
Yeah, which is 1.2.
Yeah, 1.2 terabytes Intel SSD. So, that thing is. I mean, it's not as quick as a RAM.
Yeah.
Technically, but it's so fast that in a lot of situations you're just clicking on something and bam.
Yeah.
It's there. It wasn't loaded in the RAM yet, but there it is. So.
I mean, it's overall, this sounds like a really, really impressive computer. I mean, the price you're paying for it, you would hope that you get that. You know, again, if you're tuning in, it's about $8,700, the one that we're talking about. But there's different options you can get too, right? You don't have to get the 128 gigs of RAM.
Right, and that like contributes a lot to the price.
Yeah.
And we took that into account in our review. Whenever the thing about reviewing these systems like the Mach V is that you get one system that is representative of like this huge range of options, so it makes it a little tricky. So we like to sort of, I guess, handicap for that. Go in and look at a few competing systems and price them out with similar hardware in different ways.
Okay.
To see how they
Yeah.
stack up. And really, when you configure the Mach V like competitors, it's not really any more expensive than most of them. There are a few that are a little cheaper, but we're talking like hundreds of dollars here, not thousands.
Well, and let's get into talking about the competitors too. Before we do that, we got a question here from Vince. Does this PC have a high bandwidth slide bridge?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's using the new NVIDIA high bandwidth SLI bridge. Yes.
Okay, SLI bridge. Let's see. And there's more comments that are coming in here. So if you have more questions, go ahead and pop those in there, and we'll get to them. So competitively, how does it compare to the other PCs on the market? Does this stand above them for these high end ones?
Yeah. That's
It does.
why I got the editor's choice.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, it's not necessarily the performance that's going to make it stand above, because you can configure all these systems very similarly. It's really the overall build quality. Something else that's just interesting about the Mach V is it has a really good warranty. It's got this 3-year warranty that's standard. And a lot of competitors, even when you get a system that's this expensive, you're still looking at a standard 1-year warranty. They also have really good shipping terms on their warranty. And I think that if you're going to pay this much money for a computer, you want to really know that the company is going to be having your back. And they have some good terms on their warranty for it. Also, runs pretty quiet. It's not really a very loud system despite the power. Easy to upgrade. There's really not a lot to ding it for.
It's being noted. So here in the chat, if you're watching on YouTube, again, YouTube, we're broadcasting this. Let's see. A couple of people own Falcon Mach V's, bought them back in 2009, but now they're saying that it'd be better to build your own. Izzy says it would be much better to build your own. How do you feel about that? Do you think building your own is a better route, or buying something like this?
Well, it's certainly cheaper to build your own, I would say. You're paying for a premium here for the warranty, again, for the repair service, the testing, the overclocking. Those are things that even take experienced builders hours to do, or if not, days or weeks. And especially, we got in, I think it's kind of clearer when we got in that digital storm you were talking about, where it had open loop liquid cooling all throughout. And that's a process that is immensely complicated. It requires a lot of knowledge and cutting and sanding and fitting things properly, and can go really, really wrong. And I think, you will save money if you build your own system, but these systems tend to provide a lot of things, optimizations, and build quality wire management that a lot of people don't have the skills to do.
Right.
And even people who do, you save time here. Yeah.
It would take a lot of time to put together a system that looks as nice as the Mach V does. And it's I always feel like it's kind of an apples to oranges sort of thing, because I think we all know and have known for a long time that building your own computer is cheaper. But the fact is that there's also a lot of people who, for very good reasons, are never going to be convinced to actually build their own computer.
Yeah.
It's easy for me to do, but it's easy for Brad to do. But
it's not
Brad
easy for
was
me to
helping
do.
out a friend
I will
recently,
be.
And Brad was helping out a friend recently, and
his motherboard didn't work. It was
the build ended up being like a 3-week process because the motherboard was faulty, and
had to have it RMA'd. I sent it back, and they checked it, and they sent me a new one. It's always sort of a
crapshoot.
It is sort of a crapshoot.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might get a part that doesn't work, and you have to. I spent a lot of time. I brought that computer home, and I diagnosed it. I figured out what was wrong. I pulled parts. I put replacement parts in.
So that just sounds like a whole lot of frustration to me.
But at the same time, I think someone who's coming out and saying like, well, isn't it better to build your own PC? Like, for you, probably.
Yeah.
If it's that nonchalant of a thing to like, I would just build this thing. Well, then you should probably do it.
Yeah, exactly.
This is not, then it's, this is targeted. There are people, like you're saying, who want to buy a high-end computer and not worry about putting it together. And
And
especially
have a warranty on it and have all that.
overclocking especially is something that on these systems they tend to do a really good job of overclocking graphics cards, overclocking CPUs.
Yeah, there's a question here. Do you think that it can be overclocked or does it even need to be?
It's already pretty overclocked.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. So the overclock is it's 4.3 gigahertz, and
It's up from 3.
I'm gonna look it up. I think it's up from 3. So I mean that's a huge overclock. Yeah. So the base clock speed on this processor is 3 gigahertz. The maximum base turbo boost is 4 gigs, but you're not gonna see that all the time, especially with a 10-core processor. So the overclock on this, it's 4.3 gigahertz, all the cores, and we've seen in the benchmarks because we tested this processor at its stock speed when it came out, and there's a quite substantial, I think it was like 20 to 25% performance boost from these overclocks. So and Falcon, another thing that they give them credit for is Falcon is one of the only manufacturers that does not charge for overclocking. They will do that if you want it. A lot of other companies will charge you $50 to $100.
Some will charge you more for like a higher overclock too.
Yeah, and some will charge you more for higher overclocks.
So it sounds like Falcon definitely stands behind their product. It stands behind the computer and will support you.
Yeah, and I think when we get into these high-end computers, the Falcons, the Origins, the Digital Storms, like you mentioned, a lot of what we're talking about and the difference between these companies is the way they support their products after you have them in your hands, and the way they put them together on the way and how they quality check them. And I think we've seen consistently that Falcon Northwest is one of those companies that things are almost always perfect.
Yeah.
Now you have these, so going from the high-end computers, that we're talking about, and again, if you're just tuning in, we're talking about the Falcon Mach V and kind of giving a review of that, and there's a lot of details that we've gone through, so if you still have some questions, go ahead and feel free to pop those in there. But Matt, you were bringing up a point that you kind of wanted to talk about the gap between these high-end computers and what are standard PCs now. Like that seems to be like a widening gap.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's one of the interesting trends in computing right now. And it has been for a few years at least, is just how big this gap is getting. Because on your average laptop, we've seen pretty incremental upgrades in performance over the last few years. And by that I mean Intel comes out with a new processor. It's a little bit quicker, but it usually focuses more on power savings.
Gotcha.
And since so many people today do buy laptops, I think there's definitely a feeling of stagnation there.
Yeah.
But in the high end, that's not necessarily the case. We have seen some pretty, big upgrades in performance, especially if you start overclocking stuff or you have multiple cores. So just to give you an idea, the Falcon Northwest in a 7-zip. So 7-zip is one of the benchmarks we use. It's a compression utility. So it provides a really good indication of performance because it uses a lot of cores really well. And it has a benchmark built into it that pumps out a score. The 7-zip combined score for something like the Mach V with the 10-core processor is going to be 60,000.
Okay.
And that's overclocked. It's not overclocked. I think it's... So the 6950X, when we tested that without overclocking, it was 47,000.
Okay.
Something like a Core i7 system, let's say. Looking at some of the benchmarks here, that's going to be around the low 20,000s.
So that's a pretty big difference.
Core i7 quad core, latest model. That's... For a lot of people, they would be really happy to have that processor.
Is that just because expectations are lower? If they don't know what is possible out there?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with price. But I'm just trying to get a sense of like where your money is going with this. And then if you look at a laptop, like a pretty fast laptop, like say the Razer Blade Stealth, that's going to be under 10,000. So under 6, it's going to be basically 6 times slower in this benchmark.
Wow.
Than the Mach V. So, okay, like, you start to look at that and think that maybe the pricing isn't quite so crazy.
Yeah, now
if
it
you
starts to
actually
make
need
sense a
that
little bit.
performance. And I don't think we've ever seen gaps in the low end, high end like this before.
That's sort of the kicker, though, is that if you need the performance,
Right.
that this is, we're talking about this system that, we, right in our little recommended accessories, we have a 4K monitor.
Yeah.
Because if you hook this thing up to a 1080 monitor, you're really missing the point.
Yeah, it's kind of seems
You're,
like it would
you're
just
wasting
be wasted.
you're wasting like $7,000 in
Yeah.
the process. It's really, you need to have, if you need this kind of performance, if you're playing at 4K or 3440 by 1440 or really high refresh rates, things like that, and super sampling. But this is not.
And again, maybe we can show some of the pictures too of the computer just as we're going through this. It's being asked, what is the life expectancy of the Falcon PC? How long would you expect something like this? Like, you're investing this in it, you're going to get a 4K monitor for it.
If you're talking about how long you expect it to be relevant performance-wise,
Yeah.
5 years would not be.
I would say at least.
Expected,
we haven't been
and-
moving towards 5K really quickly, and this is very capable system at 4K.
Yeah, yeah, I would say so. So, the first thing the thing that's going to go obsolete probably the most quickly will probably be the graphics.
Yeah.
And it really it depends on what you're willing to tolerate as far as like your level of detail. If you want to play everything with all the things ramped up at 4K, then you're probably gonna have to upgrade those GPUs like in 3 years.
Yeah.
Because.
But that's kind of standard anyway, right? That you're going to have to do that?
Yeah, especially with like a 4K resolution.
Yeah.
Because it's just so crazy of a resolution. Now, if you're playing at like 1440p, let's say. Then you're probably good for half a decade or maybe more with those two GTX 1080s. The processor itself, like that thing's going to last forever probably. Like it's going to be relevant for a really long time because processor performance is not really a bottleneck for average applications, and this has 10 cores, 4.3 gigahertz clock speed, like. If you're doing something like the video editing, like you will want the upgrade,
Right.
because again, like you're going to see the performance benefit. That's going to save you time. But
Overall, this is a really impressive computer, though. I mean, I'm certainly would like one. I don't think I'm going to invest the 8700, but I can certainly see ways where you could really get a lot of value, especially if you're going to get that many years out of it.
Yeah.
That's going to add to it too.
and it's worth pointing out the Mach 5. I'm going to look up real quickly. The starting price though looks like it's around $3,000.
$3,000 before you start adding in the bells and whistles.
Actually, the base price for the most entry level system is $2,386
for a Mach 5.
Yeah, so that's going to get you a Core i5 quad core processor. It's going to be not nearly as quick, but it does still have the benefits of the same case.
Yeah.
The same general build quality, same warranty availability. So, that's definitely an option if you're looking for a sort of a more mid-range
Okay.
computer.
What card comes in that? Is it the
I just closed it, but
probably a 960?
it's
I would
probably
imagine.
something like a 960. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's that's going to be a system too that at the price, still people might still balk at it, but that's a system that's going to be very reasonable, I think, for a lot of people. You really
that
that's
price
sort of
range is
where
a
most
lot.
people are playing. I think is that i5 mid-range 900 GTX 900 tends to be sort of the sweet spot.
All right, as we're starting to wrap up here, I just realized what time it was. Any final thoughts on it? Like anything else you want to share about the Falcon? I see this one quick question. I think we answered this already, but does the PC have the new GPU from NVIDIA or the Titan?
It's got the GTX 1080.
GTX 1080. Two GTX 1080s. So, all right. Any final thoughts on the Falcon Mach 5? I have to say it like that. It just sounds like it needs to be said like that.
Well, it's a great computer. It represents the very cutting edge of what you can get in a desktop these days. It's going to seem like overkill to a lot of people, but like I said, there's a lot of options there. So the fact this one is $8,700, don't let this discourage you from looking at some of the more entry level versions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really, it's still a really nice time to be a PC enthusiast, despite all the gloom and doom about, PC hardware. We still see some systems come out that just completely push, the boundaries of what's possible with your home home PC. So
Awesome. All right. At the beginning of the show, we did talk about Pokemon for just a minute. Brad, you claim to be Team Yellow. Please explain why Team Yellow is the one people should choose.
Team Yellow is the underdog. I think that's the best way to put it.
It's the underdog. That's
underdog.
it? That's all you have going for you?
That's
Okay.
I do want to talk about the Mach 5, which
Okay, I'm
one
sorry.
thing,
One more
though.
thing on the
If
Mach
that's
5.
Okay, we
can still do the Mach 5.
I think the one sort of point of disagreement I have with the Mach 5 is performance aside, and it's a lovely build quality. It's an expensive computer and it's a showpiece. And I do feel like while the paint job is really nice, personally, I prefer the systems with the windows and the
You want to
lights.
see,
And if
yeah.
I'm spending all this on a really nice system, I kind of like the open loop cooling and the color coordinated cables and all that stuff. I sort of miss it when I use the Mach 5. I'm sort of wishing there was a window or some fancy aesthetics inside.
Right.
that's sort of Falcon's.
Some runner lights.
It is.
It's sort of
it makes
Falcon's
sense.
thing.
It's an understated thing, but I guess I sort of like the overstated at that price point.
Do they have a custom option with that, or it's just it? You just get the metal case?
No, they do have. I believe they do the open loop liquid cooling, but Falcon has always been a kind of about understated performance. So
It's more of a meat and
they
potatoes kind of
don't-
computer.
Like some of their competitors have, like you can put the case window on whatever side you'd like. You can get all these different colors. Falcon's like, no, it looks like this. You can get a custom paint job, but I mean, it looks nice, don't you think? So why don't you just get this one? And the benefit of that, I think, is the solider case. I mean, that's the trade-off. Like a competitor example is Origin Millennium, which is hugely customizable. Looks really nice. We have one in the office right now. We're testing. But because they do this whole custom enclosure thing, it's very unique. They have a lot of plastic body panels on the outside. It doesn't feel as nice and premium. They have to do that so they have the flexibility for all these different options.
Right.
And Falcon's like, no, it looks like this, and it's all metal, and it's really solid, and that's just how it is.
This is what it's going to be.
Yeah, it's just whatever you like,
Yeah.
priorities. So
All right, but internally, it gets a
Yeah.
9 out of 10,
Editor's
Editor's
Choice.
Choice Award. All right, so that is the Falcon Northwest Mach 5. So if you're watching live right now, you can go back to the beginning of this video as soon as we're done and see everything. Everybody went into a lot more detail as far as the computer. And no matter when you're watching this, know this. So this is our Close to the Metal. This is our computing show that we do it every Wednesday live at 10 a.m. Pacific time here on YouTube and on the site. So mark it on your calendar, tune in, and let us know what you want to talk about. If you have something specific you want to get to, you can always email podcast@digitaltrends.com and let us know. If you have questions following this up, you can leave comments on the YouTube video, and we'll try to get in there and get those answered as well. And be sure to check out the article at digitaltrends.com as well and read through it, a lot of detail on it and what's going on. We love doing this show, so thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Close to the Metal. We've got to have some metal music though for the outro.
We
I
do.
think.
Yeah.
We'll work on
We do
that.
some air guitar and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, something. All right, thanks everybody.